There is a strange and almost paradoxical law that governs human relationships. Carl Jung once said, "It is the magnetic tension between the light of the empath and the unspoken resentment of those who secretly wish to extinguish that radiance." Think about that for a moment. How many times in your own life have you walked into a room, said nothing at all, and yet felt the atmosphere shift? Some people lean in, warmed by your presence. Others turn cold, their smile polite, but their energy contracting, as if your very being unsettles them. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't provoke them. But still, you can sense it, that quiet resistance, that hidden hostility that has no name. Why is it that those who love the most, who give the most, who carry an open heart, so often become a target of envy, misunderstanding, even subtle contempt? Why is it that the gift of empathy, a gift born not of naivety, but of surviving pain and turning wounds into wisdom, draws not only admiration, but also resentment? Jung tells us it is not coincidence. It is not fate in the simple sense. It is an alchemical reality. Wherever light shines, shadows sharpen. This is the paradox of the empath. Your light is both a blessing and a mirror. It awakens longing in others, but it also exposes what they fear to face within themselves. And that is why, time and again, the empath finds themselves loved and hated, welcomed and rejected, admired and quietly sabotaged. In this video, we will uncover why this happens. We'll explore the archetypes Jung revealed, the shadow, the wounded healer, even the sage. And we will see why resentment is never what it seems. Stay with me until the end, because in part 7, I will reveal the hidden truth Jung hinted at, that resentment itself is not hatred at all, but a disguised yearning for love. You do not want to miss that. And before we go further, I want you to ground yourself in this journey. Comment below the words, "I choose to keep my light." Let that be your declaration. And if this message already resonates, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. What you're about to hear could change the way you see every relationship in your life. Carl Jung once observed, "Wherever there is light, the shadow sharpens its edges." This is not just a poetic truth, it is a law of human psychology. The empath carries a light that is not manufactured, not worn like a mask, but radiates simply from being who they are. And yet that very light casts shadows in the hearts of others. You may have noticed this in your own life. Perhaps at work, where your presence alone brings calm into the room. Some colleagues relax around you as though the atmosphere itself has softened, but others, without reason, grow tense. They may dismiss your ideas or roll their eyes when you speak. They cannot explain it, and neither can you, but you can feel it, the strange resistance that rises up in the presence of authenticity. Why does this happen? Jung would say it is the law of opposites. Light does not only illuminate, it also defines the darkness around it. When you walk into a space with an open heart, your presence unconsciously awakens the shadows people carry, the insecurities they hide, the emotions they repress, the truths they are not ready to face. And rather than seeing this as a gift, many interpret it as a threat. Think of the sun. It gives life, warmth, and clarity. Yet not everyone welcomes the sun. For some, its brightness is too exposing. They prefer the comfort of shade because shade conceals what they would rather not reveal. In the same way, your light as an empath is never neutral. It warms those who are ready, but it unsettles those who fear being seen. This is why you often find yourself caught in paradoxical relationships, admired on the surface, but quietly resented underneath. The law of light and shadow means that your very existence creates contrast, and in that contrast,
hidden dynamics come alive. But here is what is most important. This is not your fault. You are not being punished for caring or for feeling deeply. You are living out a universal pattern. To be an empath is to embody the light, and wherever there is light, shadows will always stir. The key is not to dim yourself, but to understand the deeper psychology at play. And that leads us to the next truth, what Jung called the mirror effect. Because resentment is not only about the presence of your light, it is about the reflection it forces others to see.
Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." This is never more true than when an empath steps into the life of another. Because your very presence is a mirror, a living reflection that reveals more than people are prepared to see. Think about the last time someone seemed irritated by you, even though you had done nothing wrong. Maybe it was a family gathering where your kindness was brushed aside as if it were excessive, or perhaps at work where your calm honesty made a colleague suddenly defensive. In these moments, it feels as though your existence itself is being misread, as though your gentleness is interpreted as judgment. What is happening is the mirror effect. When people encounter an empath, they are confronted with a reflection of what they are and what they are not. Your openness, your authenticity, highlights the masks they wear. Your capacity to feel deeply reminds them of the feelings they have locked away. And rather than embracing that truth, the unconscious responds with projection. They cast their discomfort outward. They accuse you, silently, sometimes with a smile, sometimes with a sigh, of being too much. But what they are really accusing is the part of themselves they have disowned. It is important to understand this is not truly about you. You are not standing in judgment of them. You are not claiming to be superior. You are simply holding up a mirror they cannot ignore. And when the image in that mirror is too painful, resentment follows. This is why your presence can feel like a silent accusation, even when you speak no words. You remind others of their unlived potential, of the depth they long for but fear to touch. Some will draw close, grateful for the reflection. Others will recoil, unsettled by what they glimpse. And here lies the paradox. The same mirror that exposes wounds also reveals the path to healing. But not everyone is ready to walk that path. Some resist it, while others try to break the mirror itself. For you, the empath, the challenge is learning not to confuse the projection with the truth of who you are. Their rejection is not a verdict on your worth. It is a testimony to the power of your light. And if your light is forged in this way, where does it truly come from? To answer that, we must turn to the archetype Jung called the Wounded Healer, the paradox that your deepest gift is born not from ease, but from pain.
There is a profound truth in psychology and myth. The brightest light often comes from the deepest darkness. Empaths are not radiant because life has spared them from pain, but because they have walked through it and survived. Jung called this the archetype of the wounded healer, the paradox that one's ability to heal and to feel is born from wounds that never fully disappear. Think of your own story. Your sensitivity is not an accident. It was shaped, often, by experiences that left invisible scars. Maybe it was a childhood where you felt emotions no one else acknowledged. Perhaps it was a relationship that broke you open, forcing you to rebuild your sense of self. Those moments of breaking did not destroy you, they forged you. Like metal refined in fire, your empathy was tempered in suffering. And this is why others sense something in you, even if they cannot name it. They feel the depth behind your kindness. They sense the strength beneath your gentleness. They know, on some level, that you have walked through pain and come out carrying a wisdom they lack. That is why people are drawn to you, not just because you are warm, but because your warmth carries the authority of survival. History is filled with such wounded healers. Think of Maya Angelou, who endured trauma, but turned her pain into words that gave millions hope. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., who carried the burden of injustice, but transformed it into a vision of freedom. Their light was not naive, it was forged in fire, and so is yours. But here lies the paradox. While many admire that resilience, others resent it. They wonder, often unconsciously, how can you shine when I still feel trapped in the dark? Your survival confronts them with their own unhealed wounds. And instead of learning from your example, some will try to diminish you, as if dimming your light could make their shadows more bearable. This is why the path of the empath is never simple. Your gift makes you magnetic, but it also makes you a target. And without awareness, this gift can become a trap, the unconscious pull to take on more pain than is yours to carry. Which brings us to the next chapter of the empath's journey, the Martyr Complex. Why so many empaths, conditioned by love and loss, confuse compassion with self-erasure.
For many empaths, the greatest danger is not the hostility of others, but the silent trap within themselves, the belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. This is what Jungians call the Martyr Complex. It is the unconscious pattern where kindness crosses a line and becomes self-erasure. It often begins in childhood. Maybe you grew up in a home where your sensitivity was noticed, even praised, but only when it served others. You were the peacemaker in family conflicts, the child who stayed quiet so others wouldn't get upset, the one who felt responsible for everyone's emotions. And somewhere along the way, you learned a dangerous lesson. To be loved, you must give yourself away. That lesson does not disappear with age. It follows you into adulthood. At work, you may take on extra tasks to keep the peace, even when your own workload is already crushing. In relationships, you might listen endlessly to others' struggles, but hesitate to share your own, fearing it will make you too much. Friends, coworkers, even family come to expect your endless patience, your tireless giving, without realizing the cost it demands from you. And here lies the paradox. People admire you for being so caring, yet they unknowingly drain you. They drink from your well without ever asking how deep it runs. The empath, caught in the martyr role, often allows this, not because they want to suffer, but because they've been conditioned to believe their worth depends on it. But there is a painful truth. When kindness becomes self-erasure, it is no longer kindness. It is a wound replaying itself. It is the inner child still hoping that if they give enough, they will finally be safe, finally be loved without condition. This is why many empaths feel chronically exhausted, misunderstood, even invisible. They give and give until they are hollowed out, and when resentment comes back at them, they take it personally, as though even their sacrifice is not enough. But here is the turning point: awareness. When you begin to see the martyr complex for what it is, you open the door to a different way of being. A way where compassion no longer requires self-betrayal, where giving no longer means losing yourself. And that brings us to the next stage of the empath's journey, learning the power of boundaries. Because true light is not sustained by endless sacrifice, it is protected, honored, and tended like a sacred flame.
There comes a point in every empath's journey where endless giving no longer works. You begin to realize that compassion without limits does not make you stronger, it makes you smaller. And here lies the threshold, the moment when an empath begins to grow into the archetype of the sage. What marks this transformation? Boundaries. Now, the very word boundaries can sound harsh, even selfish, especially to someone who has been conditioned to always put others first. But boundaries are not walls. They're not meant to shut people out. They are the natural edges of your soul's garden, the fence that protects what is sacred inside. Without that fence, anyone can enter, trample, or take without respect. With it, your garden still welcomes, but only those who know how to walk gently among the flowers. Think of the workplace. You might have a colleague who always leans on you, asking you to handle tasks they could do themselves. Without boundaries, you say yes, even as your own workload grows unbearable. But with boundaries, you learn to say, "I'm not able to take that on right now." And notice, the world does not end when you say no. In fact, your authenticity often earns more respect than your endless sacrifice ever did. Or think of relationships. Perhaps you have a friend who only calls when they need something. Setting boundaries might mean gently saying, "I value our friendship, but I need our conversations to be more balanced." At first, it may feel uncomfortable, but what you are really doing is teaching others how to honor your light instead of consuming it. This is the wisdom of the sage: to shine without burning out, to give without erasing yourself, to love without losing your soul. Jung would call this individuation, the process of becoming whole, where you no longer confuse selflessness with self-betrayal. And here's the beauty. Once you honor your boundaries, your light grows steadier, clearer, and more powerful. You are no longer a fragile candle flickering in the wind. You become a torch, resilient, unwavering, a source of guidance rather than exhaustion. But this growth also brings another paradox. The brighter your light becomes, the more it is noticed, and not everyone welcomes it. To understand why, we must step back into history and myth, where every bringer of light has faced both fear and rejection.
From the dawn of myth to the pages of history, there is one story that repeats itself. The bringers of light are both feared and needed. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, and for that gift he was punished eternally. Christ offered compassion and truth, and for that he was crucified. Every healer, every visionary, every truth teller has carried the same paradox. The very gift that saves others is the gift that makes them a target. And so it is with the empath. Your presence awakens something that the world cannot live without, yet often resists. People need your warmth, your capacity to understand, your ability to feel what they cannot express. But at the same time, they fear what your light exposes. The lies they tell themselves, the pain they hide, the shadows they keep locked away. Think of our culture today. In America, we praise strength, independence, and self-sufficiency. To feel deeply is often seen as weakness, to care too much as naive. Yet beneath the surface, our society is starving for connection, for authenticity, for exactly the qualities empaths carry. That is why you may find yourself in conversations where someone mocks your sensitivity, only to return to you later, in private, longing for the very understanding they once dismissed. This is the strange alchemy of light. On the outside, people may resist it. On the inside, they crave it. And the empath lives in that tension every day. But here's the deeper truth. The world does not evolve without discomfort. Light always disrupts before it heals. It shakes what is false before it reveals what is true. The fact that some resist your presence is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are shining exactly where you are meant to. And yet this brings us to the heart of the mystery.
resentment itself. Because behind the fear, behind the resistance, there is something even more surprising. Jung hinted at it, and it may change the way you see every difficult relationship you've ever had. Resentment, when seen clearly, is not hatred at all. It is a longing, a hidden yearning for the very light it rejects.
Here is the final revelation, the truth Jung hinted at but never fully put into words. Resentment is not hatred. It is longing disguised in the clothing of hostility. Think of the people who have resented you most, the coworker who dismissed your ideas, the family member who mocked your sensitivity, the friend who grew distant when you refused to dim your light. On the surface, it looked like rejection, but beneath the surface, something deeper was stirring. They were not only rejecting you, they were wrestling with a part of themselves that you awakened. This is why resentment feels so personal, but in reality, it is profoundly impersonal. You remind people of what they have lost, or what they have never allowed themselves to become. Your openness mirrors the authenticity they crave. Your emotional depth reflects the freedom they secretly yearn for. And because facing that truth is terrifying, they cover it with scorn, with envy, with quiet contempt. Imagine someone starving, but too proud to admit their hunger. When they see another person eating freely, instead of asking for food, they feel anger. Not because they despise the food, but because they crave it. That is what resentment truly is. A hunger for the light they do not yet know how to claim. This is why the empath must not shrink in the face of resentment. If you dim your light, you rob others of the very mirror they need. If you hide your flame, you deny them the chance to awaken. Your task is not to convince them, not to carry their shadows, but simply to remain what you are, a reminder that light is possible. And here is the paradoxical gift. The very people who resent you today may one day remember you as the one who stirred their soul. They may never say it aloud. They may never thank you. But your presence, your courage to shine, may become the seed of their awakening. So do not be afraid of resentment. It is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are shining. Hold your flame high. Stand in your truth. For the world needs your light, even when it resists, even when it misunderstands. And one day, those who resent you most may finally see what your light was always trying to show them, not their weakness, but their unclaimed radiance.